Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kendra and today I'll be doing my April book buzz. This is a series I do on my channel where I go over all of the new releases that I'm interested in, and I'll go over all of these books in different categories, and I'll be giving a short synopsis of each book. So first I want to go over all of the thriller mysteries that I'm interested in that come out this month. The first book that I want to talk about is When the Stars Go Dark by Paula McLean, and the synopsis on this one says, Anna is a missing persons detective in San Francisco. When tragedy strikes her personal life, Anna, desperate and numb, flees to Northern California to grieve. She lived there as a child with her beloved foster parents, and now she believes it might be the only place left for her. Yet, the day she arrives, she learns a local teenage girl has gone missing. This crime feels frighteningly reminiscent of the most critical time in Anna's childhood, when the unsolved murder of a young girl touched the same town and changed the community forever. So this sounds like it's going to be super interesting, and I'm really interested in picking this one up. The next one that I'm going to talk about is A Good Sister by Sally Hapworth, and the synopsis on this one says, from the outside, everyone might think Fern and Rose are close as twin sisters can be. Rose is the responsible one and Fern is the quirky one, but the sisters are devoted to one another, and Rose has always been Fern's protector from the time they were small. Fern needed protecting because their mother was a true sociopath who hid her true nature from the world, and only Rose could see it. Fern always saw the good in everyone. Years ago, Fern did something very, very bad, and Rose has never told a soul. When Fern decides to help her sister achieve her heart's desire of having a baby, Rose realizes with growing horror that Fern might make choices that can only have a terrible outcome. What Rose doesn't realize is that Fern is growing more and more aware of the secrets Rose herself is keeping, and that their mother might have the last word after all. I've seen this book everywhere on Instagram, and I'm really interested in picking this one up. I know Sally Hapworth has written a lot of different books, and I haven't read any of them, but this one definitely sounds like one that I really want to read. The next book that I'll talk about is Mother May I by Jocelyn Jackson. The synopsis on this one says, Bree awakens one day and sees a witch peering into her bedroom window, an old gray-haired woman dressed all in black who vanishes as quickly as she appears. Later that day, though, she spies the old woman again in the parking lot of her daughter's private school. Just minutes before Bree's infant son, asleep in his car seat only a few feet away, vanishes. It happened so quickly, Bree looked away only for a second. There is a note left in his place warning her that she is being watched. If she wants her baby back, she must not call the police or deviate in any way from the instructions that will follow. I actually have already read this one. I actually loved it, but if you want to hear my final thoughts on this book, make sure you tune in to my April wrap-up. The next book that I want to talk about is The Drowning Kind by Jennifer McMahon, and the synopsis on this one says, when social worker Jax receives 9 missed calls from his older sister Lexi, she assumes that it's just another one of her sister's episodes. Manic and increasingly out of touch with reality, Lexi has pushed Jax away for over a year. But the next day, Lexi is dead, drowned in the pool at their grandmother's estate. When Jax arrives at the house to go through her sister's things, she learns that Lexi was researching the history of their family and the property. As she dives deeper into the research herself, she discovers that the land holds a far darker past than she could ever imagined. I've read a couple books, 1 or 2 books by the same author, and absolutely loved it, so I'm definitely interested in picking this one up. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Mirrorland by Carol Johnstone, and the synopsis on this one says, Kat lives in Los Angeles, far away from the imposing Gothic house in Edinburgh where she and her estranged twin sister Elle grew up. As girls, they invented Mirrorland, a dark imaginary place under the pantry stairs full of pirates, witches, and clowns. These days, Kat rarely thinks about their childhood home or the fact that Elle now lives with her husband Ross. But when Elle mysteriously disappears after going out on her sailboat, Kat is forced to return to the Gothic house, which has scarcely changed in 20 years. The grand old house is still full of shadowy corners, and at every turn, Kat finds herself stumbling on long heard secrets and terrifying ghosts from the past. Because someone Elle has left Kat clues in almost every room, a treasure hunt that leads right back to Mirrorland, where she knows the truth lies crouched and waiting. This book sounds so intriguing. I've also seen this one a lot on Instagram, and I'm definitely interested in picking this one up. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Light Through the Leaves by Glendy Vendura, and the synopsis on this one says, in the moment of crisis, Ellis leaves her daughter Viola unattended for just a few minutes. But when she returns, Viola is gone. A breaking point is in an already fractured marriage. Viola's abduction causes Ellis to disappear as well into grief, guilt, and addiction. Convinced she can only do more harm in her family, Ellis leaves her husband and young sons, bearing her desperate ache for her children deeper with every step into the mountain wilderness she treks alone. I've seen this one around as well. This one has a really gorgeous cover, and I think this one is more of a mystery, but this one definitely sounds super interesting, and I'm definitely interested in picking this one up. The next book that I want to talk about is Dial A For Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutano, and the synopsis on this one says, when Midland ends up accidentally killing her blind date, her mother calls her aunties to help get rid of the body. Unfortunately, a dead body proves to be a lot more challenging to dispose of than one might anticipate, especially when it's accidentally shipped in a cake cooler to the over-the-top billionaire wedding Meddy, her ma, and aunties are working at an island resort on the California coastline. This sounds like it's going to be so fun. I believe it's like a mystery and a rom-com all in one, and I'm so interested in picking this one up. The next book that I'm going to talk about is What Comes After by Joanne Tompkins, and the synopsis on this one says, after the shocking death of two teenage boys tears apart a community in the Pacific Northwest, a mysterious pregnant girl emerges out of the woods and into the lives of those same boys' families. A moving and hopeful novel about forgiveness and human connection. I actually picked this one as one of my book of the month selections, so I will definitely be reading this one really soon. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Perfect Daughter by DJ Palmer. The synopsis on this one says, Grace never dreamt she'd visit her teenage daughter Penny in the locked ward of a decaying state psychiatric hospital, charged with the murder of a stranger. There was not much question of her daughter's guilt. Police and her fingerprints on the murder weapon and the victim's blood all over her body, but they didn't have a motive. This book I actually just finished a few days ago. Absolutely loved it, so I'll definitely be giving you my final thoughts on this one in my April wrap-up. And the last thriller that I'm interested in is called Livesweepberry by Ellie Marr. The synopsis on this one says, 2 decades ago, Marissa escapes a basement prison, the only home she'd ever known. At 27, Marissa's moved beyond the trauma and is working under a new name as a freelance photographer. But when she accepts a job covering a string of murders in Portland, it's impossible for Marissa not to remember. Everything is eerily familiar. The same underground lairs, sad trinkets, and toys left behind, identical to those Marissa had as a child. And then there is a note meant just for her that freezes Marissa's blood. See you soon, Missy. This book sounds so good, and I'm really excited to pick this one up. I have one historical fiction that I'm interested in. It's called The Secret Stealers by Jane Healy, and the synopsis on this one says, Anna is a restless young widow and brilliant French teacher at a private school in Washington, D.C. Everything changes when she's recruited into the Office of Strategic Services by family friend and legendary World War I hero Major General William Donovan. But the more Anna learns about the organization's secret missions, the more she longs to be stationed abroad. Then comes the opportunity, go undercover as a spy in the French resistance to help steal critical intelligence that could ultimately turn the tide of the war. This book sounds super interesting, and I'm really hoping I can pick this one up really soon. I have one adult contemporary that I want to talk about. It's called Good Company by Cynthia D'Aprix Sweeney. And the synopsis on this one says, Flora has been happily married for more than 20 years, but everything she thought she knew about herself, her marriage, and her relationship with her best friend Margaret is upended when she stumbles upon an envelope containing her husband's wedding ring, the one he claimed he lost one summer when their daughter Ruby was 5. This book is also really, really pretty. I like the cover, and I've also seen this one around a lot, so I'm very interested in picking this one up. I have a couple romance books I'm interested in. The first one is Twice Shy by Sarah Hogel. The synopsis on this one says, Maybelle has always been a dreamer and a hopeless romantic, but living in her own world has long been preferable to dealing with the disappointments of real life. So when Maybelle inherits a charming house in the Smokies from her great aunt Violet, she seizes the opportunity to make a fresh start. Yet when she arrives, it seems her troubles have only just begun. Not only is the house falling apart around her, but she isn't the only inheritor. She has to share everything with Wesley, the groundskeeper who's as grouchy as he is gorgeous, and turns out he has very different visions for the property's future. This sounds like it's going to be super cute. I love enemies to lovers, so I'm really interested in picking this one up. The next book that I want to talk about is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata, and the synopsis on this one says, Aurora knows moving back to a place that has once been home isn't going to be easy. Starting your whole life over probably isn't supposed to be, but a small town in the mountains might be the perfect remedy for a broken heart. Checking out her landlord across the driveway just might cure it too. So this one sounds like it's going to be super cute. I know her books are super slow burn, so I'm really interested in picking this one up. And I have a couple YA fantasy that I'm interested in. The first one is Witches Steeped in Gold by Synonym Smart. This is a Jamaican-inspired fantasy debut about two enemy witches who must enter into a deadly alliance to take down a common enemy. This sounds like it's going to be super fascinating. I haven't read anything around Japanese-inspired fantasy, so I'm really interested in that, and I love books that have witches in them, so I'm really interested in picking this one up. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is The Prison Healer by Lynette Nori, and the synopsis on this one says, 17-year-old Kiva has spent the last 10 years fighting for survival in the notorious death prison, working as a prison healer. When the rebel queen is captured, Kiva is charged with keeping the terminally ill woman alive long enough for her to undergo the trial by ordeal, a series of elemental challenges against the torments of air, fire, water, and earth, assigned to only the most dangerous of crimes. Then a coded message from Kiva's family arrives containing a single order: don't let her die, we are coming. Aware that the trials will kill the sickly queen, Kiva risks her own life to volunteer in her place. If she succeeds, both she and the queen will be granted their freedom. This sounds like it's going to be super interesting, and I'm definitely interested in picking this one up. So those are all the books that I'm interested in that come out this month. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in any of these books and if any of these books are on your TBR. And until then, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!